According to some legitimate reporting, Tyran Stokes might be committing tomorrow. And okay, sure, I'll believe it when I see it.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe. On today's episode of the show, we're going to talk about how the Cats need more shooting, and they're not really going after it in the transfer portal. Also, Ryan Hampton getting a knock on the door from Mark Pope and his staff. But to start the show, we've got to talk about some pressing news here live on YouTube. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. Subscribe wherever you are watching, whether it's live on YouTube, whether it's on podcast, wherever you are. Thank you so much for tuning in. According to Jeff Goodman of Field of 68, legitimate reporter, credible source, tweets out saying that Tyron Stokes might be committing tomorrow. Here's the direct quote at Goodman Hoops if you want to go find it on Twitter/X. I still call it Twitter, and I will until I die. Goodman says, I was told by one source close to the situation that Tyron Stokes, the number one player in the country, could announce his decision on Monday. Even Jeff Goodman says what I said whenever I first heard about this, I'll believe it when I see it. And then Goodman finishes the tweet by saying, Stokes is choosing between Kansas and Kentucky. Okay, sure, whatever. I'll believe it when I see it. What have I been saying? I think I've been saying this since November, guys. And a lot of you have been saying it. It's not something new. It's not a revelation. We'll believe it whenever the kid actually posts on social media with the graphic that Joe Tipton or someone does saying, I'm committing to the University of Kentucky or I'm committing to the University of Kansas. Until that happens, sure. Whatever commitment date, whatever announcement time, whatever can be thrown out by any reporter, and all due respect to Goodman, who has his opinions about this himself. He says he clearly doesn't believe it either. Until Stokes himself walks out and says, this is where I'm going to be playing college ball, and it's not a bit, it's not a joke, it's real, then we need to sort of hold our horses here for a moment. I will say the one interesting thing from Jeff Goodman in this tweet is there is no mention of Oregon. There has been some recent buzz about the Ducks, about some conversations that, hey, if he wants to move to another Nike school outside of Kentucky and he's not going to Kansas, Oregon would be the team he takes a look at. Doesn't seem like they're in the race. Never really has, at least not for the last several months. So that would be a surprise. Honestly, would be kind of a fitting way for this all to end, is for it to come to the final moments of the recruitment, Oregon not get mentioned, and then, all of a sudden, he's a Duck, which, by the way, I just want to say this. According to other reports and some people that I've talked to, Tyron is really trying to prioritize roster construction. That's one of the things that he's prioritizing, the players around him. Do you want to go to Oregon over a place like Kansas or Kentucky? I doubt it, but again, we'll just have to wait and see. I've got two things here for you about Tyron Stokes. And we've got to keep talking about him here on the show, well, because we cover the Cats. But the reality is, there's a lot going on Twitter right now. There's a lot going on social media, some of it good. I love it when the fan base is excited. I love it when the fan base is anxious. I love just having something that makes me feel anything when it comes to Kentucky basketball. Instead of just the apathetic, waning years of the final minutes of the John Calipari era, I feel something here. Now, it's not always great, but at least there's something going on. Like, I like it when the fan base is stirred up. We got to kind of take a bit of a step back. I think I said this on a recent episode where it's just like, let's wait and see. It's now almost May. We're heading into the final week of April. The kid's not committed anywhere, and he's still kind of posting in lighthearted fashion online. It's a serious decision for him. Some of the things that he posts don't seem to indicate that he's taking it that way, but at the same time, who am I? I'm just a guy with a microphone who has to listen to my opinion. All I'm sitting here telling you to do is, you don't have to do anything I say. All I'm sitting here suggesting you do is just wait. Let's just wait. Not every single thing needs to be dissected. Even Goodman, who's reporting this, guys, is like, okay, sure, cool. I've been told by people that I trust that it's going to happen, whatever. We're all kind of fed up and done at this point. The second thing I need to point out here, and a lot of you are already aware of this, this is screwing, actively screwing Kentucky and Kansas's ability to put together their roster. This is the largest asset that they would purchase for next year's team, and it's the most pivotal one because once you get him, it's not just also the most money, it's more than likely going to be the player you use on the most amount of possessions next season. So if you want to dive into the analytics for a moment, okay, $7 million, however much this guy's going to cost, cool. Further question, what do we do to build around him if he's going to have the ball in his hands so often? Can we try and force him to be a bit more of a playmaker, which is what I think Mark Pope tends to try and do with his wings and forwards. Stokes, somewhere between that 3 and 4, just because he's simply 245, 250 pounds. If he was lighter, he'd definitely be that 3, but I think in a small ball lineup, that's a conversation for another day. Can you make him more of a playmaker? Which I think he has the tools to be that, especially in transition. Very fun, very flashy at times. Can you work the offense around him where you can have some downhill drivers, some guys that can finish at the rim, some guys that are strong at the catch on the block, somebody like Marino who can work on his hands? Can you get shooters around him? Something we'll talk about later on in the episode. What does the roster look like? What sort of money do you have to spend on some of these other big-time prospects that you want to pair with him? Do you have the money? Are there other competitors? How does this all shake out? Once you finally get him, everything is not on pause, but there are some really crucial parts of this roster, and Kansas's as well, that are sort of on pause. And again, you can go to Twitter, you can listen to the insiders, you can listen to people that have no idea what they're talking about and speculate over, oh, well, Kentucky's in the back channels right now. They're talking to Milan Momcilovic. They're talking to somebody like Paul McNeil. They're talking to somebody like Tunde Yesufu. But until that stuff actually happens and until Stokes actually commits somewhere, the ball doesn't really get rolling. It just doesn't. And so we are perpetually in limbo. And again, could he announce tomorrow? Sure, absolutely. Again, hate to say it like the 5th time, I'll believe that when I see it. But as of right now, I think it needs to continue to be stated in some way, shape, or form. This is harming both Kansas's and Kentucky's ability to put together the roster that they want to build. It's getting old, and I would love to see a commitment at some point. All right. We'll continue to break this one down. We'll continue to talk to the live chat here in a little bit. Going to talk about an in-home visit Kentucky is conducting with 5-star Ryan Hampton. Going to give you my breakdown of him after watching a few different videos of the kid. Going to be going through all of this in just a second. Before we do it, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at Indeed. Sponsored jobs, workplace chaos, deadlines are stacking up, inboxes overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting there wide open. And when the pressure's on and you need to make the right hire, it's a job for sponsored jobs, because Indeed sponsored jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for. So skills, experience, location. You're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post here. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute or so that I'll be talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires. 27 over on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, you can spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves over at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. If you need to make a hire, it's a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. All right, continuing along here on today's episode of the show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Lance Dawe hanging out here with you pretty late on a Sunday night, but we keep it pushing. If you're watching live, thank you so much for tuning in. Subscribe if you have not already. Thank you so much to everybody who has pushed us past 20,000 subscribers. It is just an incredible mark to hit, and I'm interested to see what happens post 20K here on the Locked On Kentucky podcast. It's a very interesting time to be a Wildcat fan with Tyran Stokes, just keeping everybody in limbo, things getting weird on the recruiting trail, and the Kentucky Wildcats conducting an in-home visit, potentially the day of Tyron Stokes' commitment. Same time, they're making an in-home visit with five-star Ryan Hampton. If you don't know anything about Ryan Hampton, I'll just go ahead and tell you, according to Joe Tipton, he could reclassify. He is a 2027 five-star prospect, near consensus top 10 kid. He's number 12 over on ESPN's rankings. Five-star according to 24/7 Sports, five-star according to On3. He's a four-star according to Rivals, which makes no sense considering he's a top 10 player, but nevertheless, it's their rankings, it's not mine, and is pretty widely considered one of, if not the best shooting guards in the 2027 class. But he could reclassify, apparently, according to reports. A couple other things to note here: 6'6", 175, according to On3, 6'6", 190, according to 24/7 Sports. He also transferred from, I believe he was playing somewhere in Irving, Texas, to where now he's playing at DME Academy. He did that last August, that DME Academy, by the way, in Daytona Beach, Florida. I think that this is a good conversation for Kentucky to have with the kid in home. By the way, just want to let you know, Cats haven't offered him officially. I mean, there's a number of other schools that have. Kentucky hasn't offered him officially. My guess is that they're going to have some conversations to say, hey, big guy, how you feel about reclassifying? Could use another shooting guard, could use a starter, possibly, depending on what Kentucky wants to do with Alex Wilkins, depending on the right amount of money. Want to come be a Wildcat a year early? That's my guess. And if we hear absolutely nothing about Hampton after this visit, then you'll probably know the answer to that question is negatory. Okay, so let's talk about the good. After watching some of his highlights, I mean, honestly, there's a lot to dive into here, especially whenever it comes to how this could possibly fit on this year's team. So again, 6'6", 175. Apparently, I'm going to call him 6'6", 190, and I'll get to the weight thing in a little bit. We'll talk about the good first. First and foremost, this is a score-first guard. I would not put him at small forward. That's where a couple of different recruiting ranking sites put him. I would put him at shooting guard, which is where I believe Rivals has him, actually. So I disagree with a lot of what Rivals has to say here, but I think they've got this right. I would put him at the 2. Does he have guard skills yet? Not necessarily per se, but again, great scorer of the ball. That's what he does. He puts the ball in the hoop. That's what Kentucky would get him to do. I don't know anything about his defense. I don't know anything about his motor, his playmaking. All I know is that he can put the ball in the basket, and he does so at a pretty efficient clip. He is a phenomenal mid-range scorer. He's got really, really, really good touch. He's raw. We'll get to that more later. He's raw, but some of the traits that you see and the mechanics that you see from him scoring inside the arc are really, really pretty for a kid his age to have developed those skills already. And I will comment more on his shot and his mechanics later, but it's impressive for him to be where he's at right now and to be so good at consistently making the same type of moves, getting to the same type of shots, because while he is knocking down stuff at a pretty efficient clip, he's also a very tough shot taker and a very tough shot maker. These shots that he's hitting in some of these highlight videos are ridiculously tough in the mid-range. I mean, it's insane body control. It's pirouetting. It's spinning away from the basket. It's with guys all up in his face. It's through physical contact sometimes, the jumpers. It is impressive, the different types of shots, the mechanics, and the efficiency. In July of last year, he had a really, really good week at Peach Jam. You can go watch those highlights actually on YouTube if you want. Got out and transitioned quite a bit, but also worked well in the half court, averaged almost 27 a game, shot over 61% from the floor, over 54% from three. And it was, according to scouts, just incredibly impressive to see him take the next step against some really good competition. Here's a quote from Phenom Hoop Report. Ryan Hampton continues to impress as a high IQ combo guard/wing. With exceptional length, burst, and natural playmaking instinct, solidifying his status as one of this summer's most electrifying prospects. He showcases a smooth ability to create opportunities coupled with an alpha mentality that makes him a tough matchup. His confident shooting stroke and purposeful play define his impact on the court. In his 5 Peach games, he averaged 26.8 and 6.6. That is boards, not assists there, by the way. His high school coach, Jermaine O'Neal, probably have heard of that name before, said that he's giving him the Paul Pierce comp. Do I want Paul Pierce on next year's team? Yeah, I'd probably take him if it was like a very raw Paul Pierce. He raises up, he gets to his spots, his shot is virtually uncontestable at times. He's got some bailout shooting type moments in him where I think Kentucky could use someone who is as efficient as him, but also makes the types of shots that he does. Bailout shooting is something that I wrote down here. And then the last thing that I want to say positively about the kid, he doesn't hate contact. He puts the ball on the floor a little bit, and he finishes, or at least attempts to finish through contact. It's not always the most successful thing here for him, but at least he tries. And I think that Phenom Hoop Report is right there whenever they say he's got that mentality and purposeful play. It's intentional. He's not just sitting out there just running around with the basketball trying to figure out what to do. He's making decisions quickly, even if they are sometimes maybe the wrong decisions and sometimes consistently difficult ones to play finish, I guess I should say. And his version of play finishing is going to effectively being a jump shot basically every single time. At least that's kind of what I've seen from his tape. We'll talk about the bad here for a moment. The negatives. He's got a bit of a loose handle. And again, I would play this kid at shooting guard. I would not put him at the wing just because of something I'll talk about in a second. He's got a loose handle, and I would say that it's inconsistent. Now, again, does he like to put the ball on the floor? Does he like to be aggressive? Does he like to take that first step and initiate and try and make something happen? Yes, and I like that. I really like the fact that he's not shying away from the fact that it might not be the best part of his game, but it's something that does need to be fixed a little bit if he's going to be more impactful at the collegiate level, and if he wants to be an NBA prospect. I mean, you're looking at a top 10 kid right now. If he wants to make that leap to the NBA, that handle's got to get much more tight, and it's got to be much more consistent. He holds the ball way out beyond himself whenever he goes to shoot. Just talking about mechanics, it's a bit of a slower, more flowy release. You have to ask the question, how much does that matter if he's able to get his release point higher than virtually anybody on the court? But it's also something to note. It's a bit of a slower release, so it takes a little bit of time, but again, he's knocking it down. So how bad is it? It's just something I noted here. Maybe needs a little bit more rotation on his shot at times, and I'm not talking about the mid-range scoring. I'm talking about from three. I think he palms it a little bit too much at times, but again, if it's going in, do you care about mechanics at this point? He seems to force difficult shots against size. Again, is he hitting them in highlights? Yes. Is he always hitting them? No, he's not, because he's only shooting outside of Peach Jam. He's not shooting 61% from the floor, right? There are moments here where I question some of the decision-making, and I would... If the goal were to be in John Calipari style to make this kid an NBA player, I'd play him at the 2 and I would force him to learn how to be a better ball handler, have more vision, and make better decisions. At 6'6", 190, you're not going to be playing small forward in the league. You're just not. Almost no chance. If anything, you would be more likely to slide up to point than you would be to slide down to the 3. But this kid's a 2. He's a tweener wing at college. Cool. We'll rock with that. He needs to add weight. My guess is that he already is. He probably already knows that, considering we've got 2 sites telling us he's 175 and 190. The kid's probably taken a look in the mirror and said, look, I have trouble getting to my spots whenever I really try and close down into the mid-paint area. I need to add a little bit more weight to enforce myself and to get to the shots that I want. And my guess is that he has put on weight. He needs to add more in order to be a more consistent rim finisher, because you even see that in his highlight package where it's not necessarily consistent, mechanical, smooth layups. It's just kind of like fighting through it and flinging it up there and it's going in. That's not going to cut it in college. You got to add a little bit more upper body strength if I had to guess. And then the final thing here, all of this to say about the negatives, some of them aren't even really that negative. It's a lot of just comments about his shot mechanics. He's very raw. He's very, 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 very raw. There is just a lot about him when you watch him saying, okay, that kid's got a lot of really high upside. There's a lot to like here. There are flashes. Can you get a coach here that can develop him and make him into the shooting guard that I think he will end up being? Again, I'm just a guy with a microphone on a YouTube channel. Take what you want with a grain of salt about my thoughts on shooting mechanics and about what a kid's going to do and translate to the next level. I'm just sitting here telling you, I think he needs to add a little bit more weight. If he can get his handle tighter, this is one of the best prospects in the country. He already is. He shows a lot of potential. I like it. I would really like him on next year's team, especially if you can pair him with somebody like Wilkins, where you get some efficiency and some raw athleticism and talent behind a guy like Alex. Or maybe here's your starter and you pair him with a backup that's also super efficient, maybe more experienced, somebody like the Wazoo guard that we were hosting. Why can I not remember his name right now? I am just, wow. I'm batting 1,000 here on today's episode of the show. So yeah, that's what I feel about Ryan Hampton. That's how I feel about Stokes committing tomorrow. And I want to wrap up the show here, kind of getting to, who am I talking about? I'm talking about Ryan Hampton, the kid, 5-star that Kentucky is going to take an in-person visit with tomorrow, actually. I want to wrap up the show here talking about the backcourt to kind of tie this all together about Kentucky doesn't know what they're going to do with their roster construction, like fleshing it all the way out in terms of money, who they can go after, etc. They're talking to a guy that might reclassify. My guess is that's going to be the forefront of the conversation. They need shooting. It's really cool that Hampton shot 54% from 3 during 5 games of Peach Jam. My guess is based on his mechanics. He is a plus shooter. If they could get somebody like him, cool. If they can get somebody like Momcilovic, cool. If they can get somebody like Paul McNeil Jr., cool. The more I think about it, and the more I look at Zoom Diallo and Alex Wilkins, I see the positives. I see the upside. I see things that could really make this backcourt go and could be a lot of fun to watch. But the stats are the stats, especially for Zoom, and it's not an efficient perimeter backcourt. Neither of these kids consistently shoot well from 3. Now, there's upside, there's potential, but they haven't shown the ability to shoot at the end of the day with the efficiency that you need. And when you look at the way that Mark Pope is sort of developed and won at BYU, when he won at Kentucky in his first year, a lot of it had to do with the gravity and the stress that his offenses were able to put on teams from beyond the arc. All of that to say, Kentucky needs a kid or two that can shoot the piss out of the ball. They need floor spacers. And they've not really gone after a ton of guys in the portal that could be that. And the guys that they have gone after that could be that, they aren't really like heavily pursuing publicly. Could it come from the international ranks? Yeah, and I'm sure we'll be talking about more international kids as the week goes on, outside of Njai, who just committed. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways Kentucky could skin the cat here, but I'm not on staff. You're not on staff. Nobody can really make the decision other than Mark Pope and Feger and whoever else is in the room there calling the shots. I'll just say this. When Mark Pope is won, he's had a lot of really good three-point shooters. And right now, he doesn't have one on the roster. He just doesn't. That is going to be a starter and shoot from volume and be the consistent, reliable guy that you can trust. And the reason that I don't say that that's Cam Williams right now is because he was only taking it was low volume stuff for Cam Williams a season ago. I'll pull it up for you here. He was only taking a little over 3 3-point attempts per game. There's no such thing as a Kobe Brea in the portal every single year, but you need somebody like McNeil or a Brea type or a Momcilovic type, who their job is to come in and take 5+ 3-point attempts per game. Could that be Cam? Could that end up being Cam? Sure, it could be. It also has to be noted, while yes, Cam Williams did finish the year shooting the ball very well, he also started the year shooting the ball very poorly, and you can't just expect for him to continue to shoot the ball as well as he did for the final, 50% of the year, 40% of the year? You can't expect, after seeing volatility in such a dramatic way, one way or the other, you can't just expect it to even out at a high rate. You need it to be more consistent. And so that's why I say Cam can be a part of this, but I don't think he's that. He's not the gravity floor spacer that Kentucky, he's not the answer. He's not the answer. He can be part of the answer, but right now he is not the answer. Kentucky needs more. They need something different. Anyway, that's all I got for you guys. We still haven't hired Jamal Crawford. We know Kentucky's tried to get him. Jesse says at this point, I don't want Stokes. If he doesn't want to be here, then don't try throwing money at him. He'll fake an injury and just be just like JQ. I don't necessarily know if I would take that stance. But the reality is, if you want the kids that kind of make this thing go, if you want some of the kids that make this thing go, you're going to have to be willing to pay up for them. And almost all of them are going to be exclusively looking for one thing. When they shake your hand and you say, "Hi, I'm Mark Pope, head coach in the University of Kentucky," they will be looking to sit down and immediately ask you, more often than not, how much are you going to pay me? That's going to be at the forefront of the conversation or at the forefront of their mind when they want to get into negotiations, either with you individually or with their agent alongside them, which makes it even more fun considering Kentucky doesn't have a GM. So them's the breaks. Them's the breaks, chap. How many point guards do we have? 3 right now, technically. Actually, it's not even technically. We have 3. So props to Pope for making that the priority immediately in the portal. So anyway, that's going to do it for tonight's episode of the show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. You can follow the show on YouTube at Locked On UK. You can follow me on Twitter at @LanceDawe_. And you can follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, leave those in the YouTube comments below. Hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day or evening. And God bless.